Well, Belen, thank you very much. It's a treat to be here. I don't. If some people listening on earphones, I just want to make sure. Great. Okay. It's great to be here for the first anniversary of the TEPAV Center. It's a real honor. As Belen said, we've been friends for 35 years since we were students together at Oxford. So he's been one of my true guides and teachers about everything Turkish, and I know that it's what's kept me both connected and more knowledgeable about this country. I'm going to speak today about my latest book, That Used to Be Us: How America Lost Its Way in the World It Invented, and How We Can Come Back. In other words, I'm going to speak to you today about our problems. I know you've got problems, but I'm going to speak to you today about my problems, okay? And the reason I'm going to do that is I think if I tell you about our problems and how we're wrestling with them, you may find that it actually relates to a lot of your problems and your challenges. And I look forward in the question and answer time to going over that. That used to be us. That used to be us. Whenever I tell people the title of the book, which I wrote with my friend Michael Mandelbaum, their first question is always, but does it have a happy ending? And we tell everybody it does. It does. We just don't know yet whether it's fiction or nonfiction. We're still working on that. Now you might wonder, how did two foreign policy wonks — I'm the foreign affairs columnist for the New York Times, my co-author on this book is the chaired professor of international relations at Johns Hopkins — how did two foreign policy wonks end up writing a book about domestic American politics? How did I go from Beirut to Jerusalem to the world is flat to domestic American politics? The answer is very simple. My co-author and I are good friends. We live near each other in Bethesda. And we start many days of the week by talking to each other on the phone. And we started to notice something. We started to notice something over the last 3 or 4 years. We started to notice that we started every day talking about the world, but we ended every day talking about America. And it became clear to us that America, its fate, future, vigor, and vitality, was actually the biggest foreign policy issue in the world. Because Michael and I we're kind of old-time American nationalists. We believe America makes all kinds of mistakes in the world, Lord knows. But we believe on balance America provides also an enormous number of global public goods, whether it's protecting the sea lanes in Asia or mediating peace in the Middle East or promoting free trade or supporting the World Bank and the IMF. And if we go weak as a country, we go weak and can't provide those global public goods, well, I say to my fellow Americans, you won't just grow up in a different America. You'll grow up in a different world. It'll be a world ordered by Russia or China, or most likely, a world ordered by nobody at all. So we happen to believe there's something important at stake in whether America can deliver the American dream, what we call the American dream, a rising living standard. Keep it where it was, keep the volume where it was. Whether America can provide a rising living standard to the next generation or not. Something very important is at stake in that. We think for Americans, I would tell you also for Turks. So that's really what prompted this book from the two of us. When I think about America's dilemma now, I'm always reminded of that line in the Orson Welles movie where he meets up with Marlene Dietrich, who's a fortune teller. Wells plays a crooked cop. And he says to Marlene Dietrich, who's reading fortunes, "Read my future for me." And she looks up to him and says, "You don't have any. Your future is all used up." Is that us? Is that America? Well, we don't think so. But we also believe our future is not going to be won by default. We need to get our act together as a country. And that's really what this book is about. First chapter of the book is called, "If You See Something, Say Something." Those of you who visit America may know what that's from. That's actually the motto of our Department of Homeland Security. And our argument, and the reason it's the first chapter of the book, is that we have seen something that is actually hiding in plain sight. It's more dangerous than anything Al-Qaeda can do to the United States. We've seen a country in the worst kind of decline, a slow decline. There's nothing worse than a slow decline. Just slow enough for us not to get our act together and do what needs doing and fix what needs fixing. And that's, as I say, what this book is about. Now, the core argument of the book is that America today faces three great challenges. One is debt and deficit. That's the debate going on in Washington right now. Second is energy and climate, how we power the future of the American middle class and the Turkish middle class and the Brazilian middle class without tipping the planet into dangerous climate change. That's our second big challenge. And our third big challenge is the one I'm going to talk about this morning. And that is how we respond, and Turkey faces the same challenge, how we respond to what I consider to be the biggest thing happening on the planet today, and that is the merger of globalization and the information technology revolution. The more IT, the more globalization, the more globalization, the more IT. The two have merged in a way now. That is a difference of degree. That is a difference in kind. I call this merger the great inflection. And we are living through it right now, and I believe it's an inflection point that is bigger or as big as Gutenberg's invention of the printing press. But the world adjusted to Gutenberg's invention of the printing press over a century, and we're having to adjust to the merger of globalization and the IT revolution over a decade. We aren't talking about this because it's been masked in my country by the subprime economic crisis, this recession, and by post 9/11. But actually, this merger of IT and globalization is changing every workplace, every university, every classroom, and every market. It's the biggest thing happening in the world. And what I want to talk about in the next few minutes is what it means for us and what it means for you. Now, I know a little bit about this phenomenon, and the way I describe it, this merger of globalization and IT, is that the world in the last decade has gone from connected to hyper-connected. We've gone from connected to hyper-connected. And the reason I'm sensitive to this is because, as Bülent Bey said, in 2004, I wrote a book called The World is Flat, in which I said the world's getting connected. We're all connected. When I sat down to write this new book in 2011, the first thing I did was get the first edition of The World is Flat off my bookshelf. I opened it up to the index, looked under A, B, C, D, E, F, F, A. Facebook wasn't in it. So when I was running around saying, the world is flat, we're all connected. Facebook didn't exist. Twitter was still a sound. The cloud was still in the sky. 4G was a parking place. LinkedIn was a prison. Applications were what you sent to college. And for most people, Skype was a typo. I love doing that. Can I do that again? All of that happened after I wrote The World is Flat. Well, what does that tell you? What it tells you is we've actually gone from a connected world to a hyper-connected world. And we've gone from an interconnected world to an interdependent world. Those are fundamental shifts. Now, what are the signs of this? You see signs everywhere. When I wrote The World is Flat, I said we'd connected Boston and Bangalore, India's outsourcing capital. We've now connected Boston, Bangalore, and Sirisi. Where's Sirisi? Sirisi is a town 90 miles to the interior from Bangalore with 90,000 people, which thanks to web-enabled cell phones is now on the grid with your kids and mine. When I wrote Beirut to Jerusalem, I said we'd connected Detroit and Damascus. We've now connected Detroit, Damascus, and Dera. See, where's Dera? Dera is the dusty Syrian border town on the Syrian-Jordanian border where the Syrian uprising began, which thanks to web-enabled cell phone cameras, and flip cams, we are now able to watch the Syrian revolution live, despite the fact that the Syrian government has banned CNN, the BBC, Al Jazeera, and every international news organization. Why? Because the Syrian rebels have created a YouTube network called SNN, Sham News Network. Sham, as you know, is Arabic for Syria, where they dump all their video into, and networks around the world now just pluck it out. There are 10 people in the front row here. I'd bet anything that in their wallets right now, they have collectively enough money to start Sham News Network. That's a hyper-connected world. I love collecting little news stories. I was in India a year ago, a little over a year ago. Story in the Hindustan Times, October 30th, 2011, said that a Nepali telecommunications firm had just set up a 3G mobile network at the top of Mount Everest, the world's tallest mountain, where climbers and trekkers can now make phone calls using their cellular phones. Do you know how many phone calls are now being made from the top of Mount Everest that begin, "Mom, you'll never guess where I'm calling you from"? That's also the hyper-connected world. I'm from Minnesota. My wife is from Iowa. Iowa is home to a wonderful small liberal arts college called Grinnell College. Great liberal arts school located in Grinnell, Iowa, in the middle of nowhere. My mother-in-law went there. She was later chairman of the board. Wonderful school, 1,600 students. Last year, Grinnell College, 9% of all applications came from China. Of that 9%, 43% had perfect 800s on their math SATs. I'm not talking about the University of Southern California. I'm not talking about Stanford. I'm talking about Grinnell College in central Iowa. 250 applications from China, 43% with perfect 800s on their math SATs. That's also the hyper-connected world. We had a front page story in the New York Times 3 weeks ago which every Turk should have to read, because I believe every American should have to read it. It was about a new software program that the fast food juice company, Jamba Juice, has installed in every store in its chain. It breaks down the workday into 15-minute increments, and every morning, the local manager of the Jamba Juice shop starts the day by plugging in the weather report. This software determines how many employees each shop will need based on the weather. It breaks down their day in 15-minute increments. And depending if it's going to be warm, you may get to work 2 hours and 15 minutes as a part-time employee. And if it's cold, you'll work an hour and 15 minutes. The software also tracks how much juice is sold in your 15 minutes. And when there's extra 15 minutes, you will get a chance at them if more juice is sold during your 15 minutes. That's also the hyper-connected world. What is all this telling us? What it's telling us is that when the world gets this connected, it's as if the world were a single math class and the whole global curve just rose. The whole global curve just rose. Why? Because I, as an employer today, in Ankara, or in Alabama, I have access in a hyper-connected world to more cheap automation, cheap software, cheap robotics, cheap labor, and this is new, cheap genius. The 80s was about cheap labor. The 2010s is about cheap genius than ever before. That means the whole global curve just rose. And what that means is the central socioeconomic fact of our time, of the hyper-connected world. And that is that average is officially over. Average is over. We have a saying in Texas, if all you ever do is all you've ever done, all you'll ever get is all you ever got. That is no longer applicable. If all you ever do now is all you've ever done, all you'll ever get is not all you ever got. You will get less. I live in Bethesda, Maryland, 45 minutes from Baltimore. 50 years ago, the biggest employer in Baltimore was a company called Bethlehem Steel. Big steel company. 50 years ago, you could drop out of high school, not even finish high school, join the steel union, get a job at Bethlehem Steel, earn an average wage, to get an average mortgage, to buy an average house with an average size yard that would enable you to have 2.2 average kids and an average dog, and go to an average number of baseball games, and earn an average salary, and have an average retirement, and eventually have an average funeral. And it was all wonderful. You could drop out of high school and do that. Today, the biggest employer in Baltimore, Bethlehem Steel is long gone, is Johns Hopkins University Medical Center. That's the biggest employer in Baltimore today. They don't let you mow the lawn at Johns Hopkins without a BA, okay? I exaggerate, but you know what I mean directionally. Now, I know what you're thinking. I've given this talk before. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, very easy for you to say, average is over, Mr. Smarty Pants New York Times columnist and friend of Bülent Ali Rıza. I know what you're thinking. No, let me tell you about my job. I became the New York Times Foreign Affairs columnist in January 1995. And I inherited James Reston's office in the Washington Bureau of the New York Times. What an honor, what a thrill. Great editor and columnist from the 60s and 70s. Now, I suspect Mr. Reston used to come to the office every morning and say to himself, back in the 60s and 70s, I wonder what my 7 competitors are going to write today. And he personally knew all 7. Walter Lippmann, Mary McGrory, Stuart Alsop, Joseph Kraft, Tony Lewis. I know all 7 of them. I do the same thing. I come to the office every morning and I say to myself, I wonder what my 70 million competitors are going to write today. I have 70 million competitors. Bloggers, Facebook posters, you name it, online magazines. And what does that mean for me? I'll tell you a couple things it means. I was in India, as I said, last year, October 2011. I went to IIT Jodhpur. India's got these IITs, they're MITs, big, great institutes of technology. I went to IIT Jodhpur because IIT Jodhpur had just invented a $39 iPad. Okay? By the way, one of the features of the hyper-connected world, radical breaking of price points. So the iPad doesn't go from $400 to $350, it goes from $400 to $39.95, leveraging cloud open source tools. Now, it's nowhere near the beauty and functionality of the Apple iPad, but as a simple, wireless learning device is quite amazing. I went out to IIT Jodhpur to see this. I was so impressed, I wrote my Sunday New York Times column about it. My Sunday New York Times columns moves on NewYorkTimes.com at 8:30 p.m. Saturday night, the night before. That's when it first appears. Sometime between 8:30 p.m. Saturday night and 8:30 Sunday morning, when Bulent Bey would have read my column on NewYorkTimes.com, someone in India went into the comment section under my column and posted a link to a laboratory stress test of the device I had written about. Now, fortunately, it backed up my column, but it might not have. So before my readers in New York City have even read my story, someone in India, 12,000 miles away, has posted a lab test of the device I'm writing about right under my column where everyone can read it. If you don't think that doesn't keep me on my toes, oh. When I was in Beirut in 1982, I could write whatever I wanted about Yasser Arafat. It took 6 weeks for the physical New York Times to arrive by ship to Beirut. And unless someone in New York called Arafat and said, on a scratchy long-distance line, if they could get through, did you see what Friedman wrote about? Who? Freeman? No, Friedman. Who does he work for? The New York Post? No, the New York Times. Unless that happened, I could write whatever I want. Now, before your readers have read it, someone's already posted a lab test about what you're writing about. So I've got to find my extra. I'm here in Turkey now. I first came to Turkey in 1980, to this city, Ankara, to cover the military coup. I was working for UPI in Beirut. When I came to Turkey in 1980, my only goal was to do one thing: to tell Americans something they didn't know about Turkey. Very simple, very easy, because they didn't know anything about Turkey. So anything I wrote was news to them. Okay? You know what my goal is today? My goal is to tell Turks something new about Turkey. That's so much harder. Because I know my column is read here. We now have New York Times online in Chinese. We just launched it 3 months ago. When I go to China now, I'm not trying to tell Americans something new about China. That's easy. Anything I write will be new to everyone in Chicago. No, I'm now very conscious that I have to tell Chinese something new, because they're now reading me in Chinese. So I gotta find my extra, my unique value contribution that will justify my salary and my job. And that's now true for everybody. Everybody has got to find their extra. What is your unique value contribution in a hyper-connected world that will make someone feel they have to hire you, promote you, advance you? We all have to find our extra. And that's why I tell my girls, when I'm an old fuddy-duddy. When I graduated from college, I got to find a job. You will have to invent a job. That's the big difference between us and our kids. Oh, it may not be your first job. But to keep that job, to advance in that job, you will have to invent, reinvent, and re-engineer that job as you're doing it. That is the big change happening in the world today. Because when I tell you average is over, what I'm really telling you is that the middle-skilled, high-wage job has disappeared. There is no such thing anymore, or there will be no such thing anymore, as the high-wage, middle-skilled job. There will only be high-wage, high-skilled job. The high-wage, middle-skilled job is disappearing. Maybe you've heard the joke in America of the modern American factory. Just 2 employees, a man and a dog. The man is there to feed the dog, and the dog is there to keep the man away from the machines. Okay. That's where this is going. That's why one of the hottest new books in America is The Race Against the Machine. We all have to find our extra. Now, everyone's extra will be different. We all can't be Steve Jobs. We all can't be Bill Gates writing code. Everyone will find their own extra. My mom was in a nursing home for 10 years with Alzheimer's. How much extra would I pay for the nurse who didn't just take care of my mom and feed her and change her, but who put a smile on my mother's face every day? Oh, I'd pull the manager over and say, what do I have to pay to get her to work with my mom? Everyone's extra will be different. But the important thing is you have to find it. A banker in in Dallas told me this when we were working on the book. He said, Tom, I've got to tell you, today you only hire someone if you absolutely have to. And I don't think that's going away. I don't think that's just a product of the recession. We all now have an obligation to make it so someone has to hire us. So what's going on? I'll just make a couple of more points. Historically, the labor market was divided into 3 tiers. The top tier was called non-routine work. We all want to be non-routine. That's work that requires critical thinking and problem solving and cannot be described by an algorithm and therefore easily outsourced, automated, or digitized. Non-routine workers are scientists, writers, professors, doctors, lawyers, accountants, engineers, athletes, and artists. We all want to be non-routine, and that requires critical thinking and problem solving. Second tier is routine workers. These are people who do repetitive tasks in a factory or in the back room of a bank or an insurance company. Routine work is being crushed. It's being crushed by the hyperconnecting of the world because it can be described by an algorithm and therefore outsourced, automated, and digitized. Third tier is non-routine local work. This is work that has to be done face-to-face in a specific location. That's your butcher, your baker, your candlestick maker, your nurse, your massage therapist, and your divorce lawyer. All of those have to be done in a specific location, face-to-face. But the wages of your non-routine local workers will depend on the number of non-routine high-end workers you have. It's much better to be a massage therapist in Cupertino, California, next to Apple headquarters, than it is in central Anatolia, okay? Or in central Wyoming, all right? So you need people at all ends. Now here's what's happened with the hyperconnecting of the world. It's not enough anymore to say, I'm non-routine. I'm safe. I'm a columnist. I'm non-routine. No, my column now is in Chinese. I have to be creative non-routine. I have to bring something extra. Not enough to say, I'm an engineer. I'm non-routine. No, I can get my engineering talent now anywhere in the world. Not enough to say, I'm a radiologist. I'm non-routine. No, I can get my x-rays read in Bangalore now. Not enough to say, I'm a creative lawyer. No, a non-routine lawyer. No, you got to be a creative non-routine lawyer. Not to say, I'm an accountant. I'm non-routine. No, you have to be a creative accountant. Well, not a creative accountant, but you know what I mean. It's just, we got enough of those. We've had enough of those, but everybody's got to bring something extra to what they do. It's not enough anymore to say, I'm non-routine. Not enough anymore, by the way, to say, I'm a college professor. I'm non-routine. You may have followed the revolution in online learning in America this year. 3 Stanford professors who had 100,000 students each in their course on computer learning. What do I need your computer professor here at TEPAV when I can bring in Stanford's online professor who's already got 100,000 students in his class through Coursera, their online platform? You better bring something extra with whatever you do. Now, if I haven't scared the bejesus out of you enough, let me end with just a few pieces of advice that I give my own kids, and then we can talk more about this in detail. Because a lot of parents come up to me and say, what do I tell my kids? And my answer is 4 pieces of advice. 4 ways to lean into this hyper-connected world. Think like an immigrant. Think like an artisan. Think like a starter-upper in Silicon Valley. And think like a waitress at Perkins Pancake House in Minneapolis, my favorite restaurant. So let me explain. First of all, think like an immigrant. How does the new immigrant think? How does the new immigrant think? New immigrant thinks, I just showed up here in Ankara, and there's no legacy spot waiting for me at TEPAV University. I better figure out what's going on here. Where are the greatest opportunities? And I better pursue them with more focus, energy, and resilience than anybody else. New immigrants are paranoid optimists. They are optimists because they left somewhere to go somewhere better. And they are paranoid because they think it can be taken away from them in a second. Think like an immigrant, stay hungry. Because friends, we are all new immigrants to the hyper-connected world. Second, think like an artisan. Who is the artisan? I got this idea from my friend Larry Katz at Harvard. The artisan was the person in the Middle Ages, before factories, before mass manufacturing, who made every item individually. They made every pair of shoes individually, every saddle individually, every utensil individually, every piece of furniture, every piece of clothing. They made everything individually. And what did the best artisans do? The best artisans took such pride in their work. They brought so much extra. What did they do? They always carved their initials into their work. Do your job every day as if at the end of the day you'd want to carve your initials into it because you brought so much extra. Third, think like a starter-upper. I got this idea from Reid Hoffman at LinkedIn. Reid always likes to say in Silicon Valley, there's only one 4-letter word. It's actually not even 4 letters, but it does start with F. And that word is finished. Finished. If you ever think you're finished, you are really finished in a hyper-connected world. Reid's motto is always think of yourself as being in beta. What is beta? Beta is that stage in the development of a software or a product where it's about 90% done. And you throw it over the wall into the market, and the market wrestles with it and finds the cracks and the failures and the problems and the holes in it, and they throw it back, and then you work on it some more, and then the market throws it back. Always be in beta. Always think of yourself as a work in progress, and always be engineering, re-engineering, redesigning yourself. Never think of yourself as finished. Otherwise, you really will be finished. Lastly, think like a waitress at Perkins Pancake House, my favorite restaurant. I was working on this book. I was home in Minneapolis, my hometown, having breakfast on Sunday morning at Perkins Pancake House, 7 a.m., with my best friend, Ken Greer. I ordered 3 buttermilk pancakes and scrambled eggs. Ken ordered 3 buttermilk pancakes and fruit. After 15 minutes, the waitress came back, put our 2 plates down, and all she said to Ken was, "I gave you extra fruit." She got a 50% tip. Okay. Why? Because that waitress didn't control much, but she controlled the fruit spoon. Okay. And that was her extra. What was she doing in her own little way? That waitress was thinking entrepreneurially. That's what she was doing. Whatever you do in life, think entrepreneurially. Think about how I can improve this, expand it, sell it, chop it, dice it, redesign it. Think like a waitress at Perkins Pancake House. So friends, if you take nothing else from this talk, please take this. Think like an immigrant, stay hungry. Think like an artisan, take pride. Think like a starter-upper, and always be in beta. And think like a waitress at Perkins Pancake House, and always be entrepreneurial. Because we all now really do live in Garrison Keillor's Lake Wobegon, where all the men are strong, all the women are beautiful, and all the children need to be above average. Thank you very much. So the floor is open. No, you go ahead.
If I may.
Yeah.
That was certainly a non-average presentation, and you left a lot of non-average questions in our minds. Mm-hmm. Let me kick off the discussion, Tom, by bringing one other aspect of the equation, which is that you talk about this hyper-connected world, merger of globalization and IT, and yet we're killing each other like we did 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, maybe more efficiently. We're certainly reporting on it in ways that we could not do before. You're here and you're thinking not just about the way in which Turkey is fitting into this new world, but you're also looking at how Obama, the president, the de jure president of the United States in this new world that we're entering, and every day changes in ways that we cannot even imagine, but de facto leader of the world, and he has to grapple with all these issues parallel to all the other things that are happening. Looking ahead, are all these changes going to affect the way in which we relate to each other as individuals, as societies, as countries, and ultimately as the international community? Or are we going to continue to be like that even as technology changes the way in which we organize ourselves?
Bulent, it's a very good question. It's a really good question. Next question, please. No, I got to think about that. It's a very, very good question. And the truth is, the two go together, obviously. countries that are succeeding and thriving in this world, that enjoy growth, tend to have less of these kind of conflicts than societies that are failing and struggling with this world. And the real question is, how do you bring more of this potential, more of these opportunities to more people? There's nothing about globalization that makes war obsolete. We know that. That's why my first book about this was called The Lexus and the Olive Tree. And it was about these the tension between olive tree issues of identity, sect, religion, nationality, geography, interfacing with globalization and its pressures and opportunities. But what the hyper-connected world does do is it leaves you farther behind faster if you do want to pursue your ethnic, religious, nationalist fights. So, again, there's nothing about this system that will stop that, prevent that, or make it obsolete. It just leaves you behind faster. And what's scary is that you can get so far behind that you can't even see the train anymore because of how fast that it can move. That's one side, I think, of my answer to you. My other is that there's a lot about this world. People often confuse my enthusiasm for describing things as approval for them. There's a lot about this world I personally don't like. I mean, I've said before in public, so it's not a secret, that I have never looked at Facebook. The New York Times tweets my column, but I myself am not a Twitter person. And I've never smoked a cigarette. And I hope to die saying all three. What I mean by that is that I find this world too connected sometimes, too noisy. I can't concentrate. If I have to write 2 columns a week, I need quiet. I need time to digest things. And I can't digest things if I'm always tweeting or reading tweets or following you or following her, I can't concentrate. And people say to me, young people, their brains are wired differently. Really? Really, in half a generation we had evolution, so their brains are wired differently, If you believe that, I have a bridge on the Bosphorus I'd like to sell you. So I really worry about a lot of the direction in which this technology takes us. So I feel that tension, but I guess that would be my 2 answers.
Thank you. The floor is now open, and please identify yourself. Go ahead. There's a roving mic.
Right here in the front.
Right in front. Right in front. And
Tom, thank you very much for the excellent tour d'horizon on the globalization.
Abdullah, can you identify yourself?
Sure. Abdullah Hakyüz with Momentum Consulting, formerly with TÜSİAD as their U.S. representative. So I spent nearly 12 years in Washington, D.C. So my question is about the initial remarks you made at the beginning of your presentation about the U.S. role in this globalized world. Of course, U.S. is drawing a lot of criticism for some of the interventions it does, and for some of the inaction. Yes. It decides to not go with, as it's seen in the case of Syria. Yeah. So, what role do you see for the U.S. in this world that you have just described, considering all the challenges that are lying ahead of us, and considering the fact that there is no other leading nation or group of nations, or ineffectiveness of the multilateral organization?
Yes, it's a very good question, and it's one that I wrestle with a lot. Because, as I said, we're so far from perfect, we can't see perfect. But relative to the alternatives, I think we still have an important role to play. The problem is there's a kind of a tension, as implied in your question. We are still indispensable, but the problems of the world today are so much more intractable. And our allies aren't what they used to be, and neither are our enemies. And you see this around Syria. In a way, it highlights that. And I think we're still very much trying to figure it out, because as I said when I began, I'm going to answer your question on multiple layers. So I said we've gone from a connected to a hyper-connected world. But we've also gone from an interconnected world to an interdependent world. What does that mean? When you're in an interdependent world, what it means, first of all, is your friends can kill you faster than your enemies. If Greece's economy collapses and it falls out of the Eurozone, my retirement savings and yours will be affected. We both have a mutual defense treaty with Greece through the NATO alliance. But Greece can kill me today in an interdependent world. In an interdependent world, your enemies, your rivals, falling can be more dangerous than your rivals rising. If China today goes from 8% growth to 0 growth, we're completely cooked, all of us. If China gets another aircraft carrier, who cares? So we haven't made this mental adjustment. And so I go back and forth on this a lot. And I think it means we have to use our power in new and very judicious ways, because we don't have as much of it relative to the problems anymore. And that's why I did a column a couple of weeks ago. The headline was, and it was addressed to Israelis who were saying, "Come, America, you need to bash Netanyahu and tell him to do good things." And the headline was, "My president is busy." Okay. Excuse me, my president is busy because I want him to fix my problems right now. And they're a handful. And so what it means is now there's a price of admission, I think, to get us to come in. And my message to Israelis was, you need to step up. And if you step up, we can amplify you. But we can't replace you. We're not going to do your work for you. We're not going to do the work for the CHP in Turkey vis-a-vis Erdogan, okay? To bring an analogy closer to home. Now I'm going to really get myself in trouble here, okay? But, you do the work, and we can be there to amplify positive trends. But we're not going to do it for you. Those days are over. My president is really busy. Okay. We have to use our foreign aid in a different way. We have a program in America called Race to the Top now. Race to the Top in education. I think that's the future of American foreign aid. What did Race to the Top in education say? We set down 10 criteria of what we think educational reform should be about. We invited all 50 states to submit proposals to meet those standards to race to the top. 12 won, and they got grants of $40 million to $750 million, depending on their size of the school district. But what was interesting, 12 states won, but 46 states applied. And the ones that didn't win ended up implementing the same reforms. I think that's the future of American foreign aid. We're going to say, who's got the best program for educating women and girls? Who's got the best program for improving entrepreneurship? Who's got the best program for improving rule of law and civil society? You 12 win, you'll get our foreign aid, but maybe you 30 who applied, you'll see through the process that you should really be doing this anyways. So that's a difference. But the fundamental problem we have, and I have not figured this out, is that I've been saying to my Turkish friends since I've been here, if I were a Martian coming down from Mars, it happens I decide I'm going to land in a national state and a failing set of nation states. Have a nice day. Okay. So, what are we going to do about that? Now I will enter the land of total political incorrectness. Okay. People in America say, do something about Syria. Do something. There's only one thing to be done about Syria. Somebody has to occupy the space, because once a multi-sectarian society like this breaks down and you lose the iron fist at the top, there's no trust between any of the communities. And when there is no midwife from the outside to bring trust, and no Mandela from the inside to build trust, you have a real problem to your south. And we tried taking over the space. It was called Iraq. Okay? It didn't end well for us. And we made every mistake in the book, and I don't want to refight that war. But that, when you have failing states, and you have no midwife and no Mandela, it's a prescription for a permanent boiling pot. And that's what I very much worry about. And the reason we're not doing anything is we don't know what to do. We really don't. Because we know the problem. And Obama learned something from Iraq. It's not you break it, you own it, which I was the author of, not Colin Powell. In Syria, our motto is you touch it, you own it. I don't want to touch it. I don't want to touch it. I don't even want to touch it. Because the minute we touch it, people say, that's your problem. Very well, one of the Americans, they touched it, you touched it. So, I mean, I'm being funny about a tragedy. You know, but nobody even wants to touch it now. And I don't know what to do. Which is why I don't write about it. Because I literally don't know what to do. And I think the answer is going to have to come from within. And it's going to have to come. It can only come by a resolution of the oldest civil war on the planet between Sunni and Shia. Because unless there's a resolution of that civil war, there can be no citizens. There can only be sects. If there are no citizens, there can be no civil society. If there's no civil society, there can be no state. And if there can be no state, I can't help you. Yeah, young lady here. We'll go around.
Thank you very much, Mr. Friedman. My name is Shebna Mudum, and I'm a lecturer in Hacettepe University International Relations Department.
Oh, great.
I have a brief question.
Please.
Could you name some of the issues in U.S. foreign policy that the current administration has been following, as you said, average type of policies, and some of the issues that it puts an extra? Thank you.
Oh, it's an interesting question. I would, you know, the issues that Obama was not elected the first time around for foreign policy, you know. And so much of what he seeks to take pride in is really not about starting things, but finishing things. So it's finishing Iraq, finishing Afghanistan. He's a very, I think, you know, his focus is nation building at home. And so this is not an administration that has really been known for much of a foreign policy initiative, and that's fine with the American people, because George Bush wore us out, you know, basically. I think the interesting question will be what he'll do in his second term. He's talked about pivoting to Asia, but I don't even know what that means, you know, pivoting to Asia. So we put 2,500 Marines in northern Australia, you know, I mean, I'm sure the Chinese are terrified, you know. But it's about balancing China, basically is the idea. But, foreign policy is really about leverage. And how much leverage do we have in a world where we owe China $3 trillion? Okay. I mean, it doesn't mean we have to do what they say, but it does mean when they come to Washington and we don't even give the president of China a state dinner. I mean, we should be giving him breakfast, lunch, and Chinese takeout, okay, basically. It doesn't mean we have to slavishly do what they want, but it does mean our options are limited. So until we restore our strength, same vis-a-vis Putin. We can say whatever we want to Putin, but he's got oil and gas. So, how much leverage do you have on him? As long as the price of oil and gas is what it is. I don't have to tell Turks about this. So, I just don't think this is going to be a great age of heroism in diplomacy. It's why I did my column yesterday about who should be the next Secretary of State in America, and I nominated Arne Duncan, our Education Secretary. Because I think the biggest issue in the world is actually growth. And the key to growth in the information age is education. And that's all anybody really wants to talk about. And so I think our Education Secretary actually would be the most effective foreign policy advocate. So it's not a very interesting answer because it's just not a very interesting time, for foreign policy. I'm sorry. Thanks. Just want to go over here, and then we'll go back over there. Yeah.
Yusuf Işık, advisor in CHP. Your popularity is intact because you made a brilliant presentation. My question is, this fantastic world you aptly describe, it needs to be open to the majority of the population in the world. And the Middle East and North Africa is a very critical region, I think, at this time. And these values, American you called, maybe you could say universal values,
yeah.
If they are not extended, this fantastic world might stop after a while. So the United States, for some reasons, which can be understood but not necessarily approved, has been selective in supporting these values. And Turkey has tried to uphold these values and also secularism, and could have been not a model, but an inspiration. And the United States, of course, you don't speak in the name of administration, has, I think, not valued sufficiently what this could have as positive effect, and has tended to accept approaches which put, for example, women in second place.
Right.
So do you think that changing this, taking not an unrealistic, but more encouraging attitude for better regimes in the Middle East would help? Thank you.
You don't want to get me in trouble, do you? No, I think it's a very important question, and I think that, I can only tell you what I've written, which I think, what's happened in Turkey over the last 10 years in terms of economic development and political evolution is really very impressive relative to its own history and every other country in its sort of developing class. It's really something Turks should take pride in. And I've been coming here, since 1980, so I really feel it, And I'm not just talking about economic growth, growth in universities and schools and all of these things, and connectivity. But I also think, it can be dangerous for any political party to let some of these things sometimes go to their head and not, keep in balance what you need to go forward. That's, I think, one thing I would keep in mind. And the other is that we fell into something really bad after 9/11. And the thing we fell into was You see, for 50 years, we kind of treated the Arab world as a collection of big gas stations. Okay? So there was Saudi station, Kuwait station, Iraq station, Libya station, Bahrain station. And we had 3 messages to them. And the message was, guys, it's only guys. Guys, here's the deal. Keep your pumps open, your price is low, and don't bother Israel too much. And you can do whatever you want out back. You can treat your women however you like. You can preach from mosque, whatever you want. You can print whatever conspiracy theories about us in your newspapers that you like. You can deprive your people of the vote and civil rights as much as you want. You can use whatever backward textbooks you want, no problem. Just keep your pumps open, your prices low, and don't bother the Yehudis too much. Okay? On 9/11, we got hit with the distilled essence of all the pathologies that were going on out back. That's what Al-Qaeda represented, in my view. Relative to that, Turkey looked like manna from heaven, okay? Seriously. And the AK Party looked like, wow, just like. And by the way, it wasn't just talk. They delivered real changes under pressure from the EU and whatever, but it wasn't just hot air. So we maybe got a little caught up in that. And then at the same time, anybody who wasn't giving us trouble was good news. Okay? So in that context, I think we might be guilty of taking our eye a little bit off Turkey and some of the issues of society and state, rule of law, etc. I'm just giving you the context, not justification, but that's the context for it. And I hope, because I think it would be healthy for Turkey and our relationship, that we are able to be honest with each other. You should tell us what bothers you about what we're doing, and we should be doing the same, it seems to me. I think it'd be healthy for both of us. But given the options, where Turkey is today, I think it's a great thing for Turks and it's a great thing for Americans. But it's a work in progress. We should never forget that. Turkey should never forget that. Thank you. All the way back there, yeah.
Giray Sadık. I'm a faculty member in Department of International Relations at Yıldırım Beyazıt University. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the thought-provoking speech.
Thank you.
And I have 2 interrelated questions, so feel free to link them.
Please.
And I find your idea really interesting of trying to put something new, even for the context that yourself are new. For example, for Turkish context.
Yeah.
You mentioned that, and that's inspiring. But you didn't mention about the specifics. I'd like to hear your impression about what have you seen as new in Turkey or in terms of Turkish foreign policy. In that respect, you may have some comparative perspective in time. You mentioned that you've been here about 30 years ago and so.
Yeah.
And the other question, perhaps if you like to link with that, you talked about the lessons. Well, perhaps more personally, the final 4 lessons, but how would you apply, if possible at all, those lessons to Turkish-American relations in that respect? So what could be those venues as we are heading ahead after elections? So how would you link them?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and I'm not sure I can give you the exact answer, and somebody would repeat that answer, but it's a very good question. The things that I like about what's going on just as a visitor and a friend of Turkey, the economic growth here, because it's been internally driven, you didn't just find oil. It's about people's energy and creativity. That really floats my boat, and about risk-taking and entrepreneurship, because that's self-sustaining, something you own. That to me is very impressive. The number of journalists you have in jail does not float my boat. That's not very impressive. The degree of self-censorship in your press does not float my boat. The degree of intimidation of your media does not float my boat. So that would be the kind of balance, that I'm talking about. Now, why does that matter? I think that we're heading into a world where the big divide between countries is not going to be between developed and developing countries. So Turkey is a developing country. Now it's maybe almost a developed country. I don't know what the criteria is. I don't think that's for the round world. Doesn't matter. I think the real divide in the world is going to be between HIEs and LIEs. High imagination enabling societies and low imagination enabling societies. Why do I say that? Because if I just have the spark of an idea now, if I just have the spark of an idea, I can actually go to Delta in Taiwan. They'll design it for me. I can skip over to Alibaba in Hangzhou, and my friend Jack Ma will line up 20 Chinese manufacturers to manufacture this for me. I can then jump over to Amazon.com, and my friend Jeff Bezos will do all my fulfillment and delivery and gift wrap it for Bülent Bey for his birthday. I can go then to Craigslist and get an accountant, and I can go to freelancer.com and have someone do my logo for $19.95 unless somebody else wants to do it for $19.75. All of those are commodities today, except that. And that means anything you do that interferes with that is going to cost you in the long run. Because the people who do this best, very mobile. They don't like seeing their journalists arrested. They don't like having their press intimidated. They don't like feeling like if they say something in public it might get them in trouble. So people should keep that in mind going forward. Censoring Google, that's not something that happens here, but in China, that's a proxy for that. Sends a very bad signal in a world of HIEs and LIEs. And so this stuff has implications way beyond. In the knowledge age, if I'm a knowledge worker in Turkey, remember, people like in America, we had this whole election issue of outsourcing. Oh, outsourcing. I saw you outsourcing the other day. I saw you outsourcing behind the building there. Outsourcing is so 90s. I got to tell you. Outsourcing. Every time I hear that. There is no out because there is no in. There's just a seamless, interconnected web. And when that's the case, there's no out and there's no in. There's just good, better, and best. And if I can't get good, better, and best in Ankara, I will get it in Alabama. And nothing will stop me. So in a world where there's no out and no in, just good, better, and best, you better make sure you are good, better, or best. Because if you're not, I will find it. You know why? Because if I don't, Bülent Bey, my competitor, will. And he can do it just as easily as I can. So that's why you may think what's going, not you, but I'm saying people think what's going on in politics over here doesn't matter over here. Oh no, don't think that for a minute. The Russians tried to found their own Silicon Valley, outside of Moscow. Good luck, okay, with that, all right?
15 minutes. We got about 15 minutes.
Sure, yeah.
Hi, Jane Kaygil from Atılım University, IR department. Thank you very much for this talk. Now, I have to say I have some problems with this flat world kind of images.
Please.
In 1990s, geography literature started to discuss these ideas. And Neil Smith from New York says that the geographers discovered that the world is flat, kind of thing. So this was sort of a criticism of him, details of which cannot be discussed a lot.
Sure.
So we have to discuss things like, for example, how this relationship can be classified, you know, connectivity, hyperconnectivity,
right.
cores, agglomerations, etc., etc. Values. So, my question is something else. What you're saying is, on the one hand, the world is hyperconnected, and on the other hand, the United States is busy with internal matters and will no longer be able to provide global public goods. Mm-hmm. And this sounds like trouble.
Not quite. It's not to this maybe scope and scale
to the
in the past,
extent.
but not zero at all. Yeah.
So my question is, how you're going to see, how you're seeing the future? Like, for example, will United States go back to some sort of isolationism?
Right. Good question. Yeah.
So,
okay. Good question.
Thank you.
So let me, because there's a lot implied in your question. Let me try to take the beginning, middle, and end. So first of all, there are a whole bunch of books called "The World Is Not Flat," "The World Is Spiky," "The World Is Curved," "The World Is Lumpy," "The World Is Bumpy," and I got a whole library full of them. Okay, and my attitude toward all of them, permit me my arrogance. Okay, is you're all wrong. Okay, and by the way, that's what they were saying 7-8 years ago, and all I see going forward is actually more and more of the trend line that I spoke about. Okay, so I don't buy it. I just think it's looking at the thing too narrowly, you know. Because why? People look. Had I been really honest, not honest, had I been totally accurate, had I been an academic, not a journalist, maybe with a little more license, my book would have been called "The World Is Flattening." Okay. It would have sold about 1/10 the number of books. Okay, but the point is, obviously, this is a process, and it's unfolding, and it's uneven. But the reason I called it what I did was to get people's attention to the direction, speed, scope, and scale of what was happening. That's one thing. Secondly, people really, in my view, misunderstand globalization. So I have many critics. One group are economists, a particular group of economists, say, pick up Friedman's book. There are no numbers in it. There's no graphs. I went through it. There's no graphs. How could he be? Guess what? Economists don't own globalization. What do they always say? Oh, Friedman. As a trade per capita, in 1860 was bigger than it is today. And you say the world is flat. Globalization, in my view, is not about trade. It's about the ability of individuals to act globally. That's what's new. The ability of individuals to compete, connect, and collaborate globally. And that's actually what my book is about. So when people throw some statistic at me about trade, I say, let me tell you, when my mom, God bless her, was living, I was working on The World Is Flat, and I called her one day. I said, got her on the phone. She was in Minneapolis. And she sounded distracted. I said, Mom, what's going on? My mom was a world-class bridge player, card game. What's going on? She said, you're interrupting me. I'm playing bridge on the internet with someone in Siberia. Okay? My mom in Minneapolis. So when these economists tell me in 1860 there was more, I say, was your great-grandmother playing bridge on the internet with someone in Siberia in 1860? That's what I'm talking about. It's the ability to people to compete, connect, and collaborate globally that my book is about. And what the flattening of the world has done has enabled that at a speed, scope, and scale to more people than ever before. So it's very easy, and shame on me, I got the benefits of this, so I have to accept the downside, to take the title of my book as a caricature and just say, oh, the world is not flat because my hotel room had a bad internet connection. You know what I mean? And, or because, you know, no one's trading, you know, from someplace or whatever. So people, I think, just completely get it wrong.
Couple more, I think.
I said, so that's sort of, I guess, what I would say. I don't know if please. Isolation. Oh yeah, thank you. That was, I knew the second part of it. I think what we're learning, it goes back to my answer on interdependence. And is that we can't possibly be isolated. We cannot possibly, since we can't be isolated from these problems, we cannot possibly pursue isolationism. And so I think what you're simply going to see, this is a relative degrees. And so you will see it'll be less Bush 2 or more Bush 2 than Bush 1, more Obama than Bush 2. It'll be a much more judicious use of American power, trying to leverage more assets and allies, but it won't be isolationism that we couldn't do if we wanted. All the way back, yeah.
And in fact, I've been married to teachers. I can't ever get them to budge.
So I said, if you've negotiated with the Chicago Teachers Union, you can negotiate with Putin, anybody, Netanyahu. It's a day at the beach.
Absolutely. Going back to Syria, and of course, with reference to your Martian look to the right, the question from an international law point of view with Syria is the fact that it's an internal conflict, which, you know, sovereignty trumps these kind of other issues as well. Certainly, perhaps by design, but if not, from an international law point of view. But you hear a lot of discussion
right now, you know, and a little bit out of my expertise, the future of the nation state, you know. I don't think they're going away, you know, but they'll be nowhere nearly as impermeable as they were in the past. But I go back to, who knows what the next 7 years will bring. Remember, as I said, 7 years ago, no one had ever heard of Facebook. You know, so who knows what the next 7 years will bring. That will affect borders, either making them higher or erasing them. Thanks for your question. I wish I could give you a better answer. I don't have it in me. Thank you. I'm out of gas, Bulempe, so I think we'll close it there. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
You heard the whole thing.